Saturday's assassination attempt on Donald Trump was obviously a security failure. As such, questions and concerns are being raised regarding the U.S. Secret Service and its ability to protect the country's current and former leaders. We're joined now by Christina Billout of CMB Consulting. She's a former special agent in charge of the United States Secret Service in Phoenix. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ted. Appreciate it.
What exactly is the Secret Service charged with at events like this?
Right. So the Secret Service has complete control over all sorts of events, particularly during the campaign. They are the primary investigative and protective agency for the protectee, whoever it is, the candidate. Their goal is to go in, and oftentimes there's not a lot of time ahead of these events to prepare, and their goal is to go in and do what they can with what assets they have in the townships and cities that they're going into. So there's a lot that goes into setting up a security plan, and we could break this down in so many different ways, but that's their primary role with candidates, and which Donald Trump is a candidate.
Let's break it down this way, because this helps me, because I read about this and I think it's relatively easy to understand. It sounds like the Secret Service sets up an inner, a middle, and an outer perimeter, and they're responsible for the inner. I'm guessing they work with law enforcement, local law enforcement in the middle, and not so much concerned about the outer. Does that make sense to you?
Not so much. I think we can break it down that we have 360-degree coverage above and below is what we're looking at. We do look at the concentric rings of protection, but we have a hand on every level of the perimeter. So we'll coordinate, we'll set up counterparts with local law enforcement and work from the outside in. My biggest concern, and the biggest concern in the Secret Service when I was there and still is what's going on the perimeter. There's no doubt that there was a failure here on Saturday, but there's a lot that goes into pulling together an outdoor campaign event in the throes, in the final months, if you will, of a campaign. A lot of times these locations are decided, in the air as presidents are flying around from city to city.
Right.
They're directed by polls. And sometimes agents get, a couple hours of advanced notice that these events are being set up. Sometimes they get a couple of days.
The gunman got off some shots before Secret Service fired back. And again, close. I saw, again, a report, I'm just judging from what I'm reading, that the Secret Service sniper may have been surprised that the gunman was that close.
So, right, we look at all aspects. First, I want to say that the response of the agents was absolutely textbook. It couldn't have gone, I don't think, any better with what you had. Every agent wakes up thinking today's the day. It's going to happen today. So we prepare, we train, we are ready for such an event. It was very coordinated. The communication was excellent. I have to remind people who've been asking me, what happened? Why was the counter sniper team up there looking sort of surprised? Well, it was pretty simple. The counter sniper teams have one job. They're to isolate the target and decide whether they're friendly or foe and neutralize them. They don't shoot to wound. So there's a big decision that needs to be made up there, and a lot of communication that has to happen before they pull that trigger and neutralize that target. I believe, after looking at all the video and really reading and really studying all that's available right now, that there was a lack of communication, I believe, which can happen. There are sometimes 2, 3, 4 different agencies, police agencies, that come together to support an event like this, depending on what assets are available with the township or the city. And not everybody's on the same radio communication. There is a command post. There are decision makers with radios, and everyone's in the same room making the decisions. But things don't happen at breakneck speed. We have to be absolutely sure that that person on that roof was not somebody perhaps from another township, another law enforcement officer who had been sent up there to investigate what people were saying on the ground.
And another thing that I found curious was you mentioned that the Secret Service did everything right as far as once the shots were fired. I've got to question that, because it seemed like he was up and he's waving and he's doing his he's still a target and no one knows if there's a second shoot. That didn't look right to me.
And it doesn't, from an untrained eye, and forgive me, but there's a lot of communication going on in the earpieces. There's a lot of information that's being passed down immediately. So the agents very likely wouldn't have gotten up if they didn't feel that the target had been neutralized, if they didn't feel safe or hadn't been directed to do so. So when I say that it happened, I think as well as it could have, you're also dealing with a 6'3" man who just got hit, is probably going through some shock of his own, is considering, his response, and also trying to remain poised and at a campaign event like we know Trump does. So you're also dealing with the cooperation, so to speak, of your protectee in order to get them out. But there was communication, it was coordinated. You certainly can't have the first part of the group of agents pulling while the second part isn't pushing. There has to be a coordinated effort there. And based on what I saw, there certainly was.
All right. Christina Billoud, again, Secret Service, former U.S. Secret Service here in Phoenix, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for the insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Ted.